Hello, everyone. Chief Master Sergeant Chip Chadick, 2 Bomb Wing Command Chief, here with another episode of Between Two Buffs. Today, we are going to be talking about domestic violence awareness. We have a wonderful group of subject matter experts here that are going to help us learn to develop better relationships, as well as potentially maybe pick up some extra tips on what healthy relationships look like, what healthy relationships or unhealthy relationships look like. And we're just going to have a conversation. So that we can have this conversation, we're going to go around the little circle here. Sir, starting with you, if you'll introduce yourself and tell us where you're working on base and kind of your subject matter expert.
All right. Hey, Chief. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Captain Ryan Lyman Jr. I'm the Family Advocacy Officer and also a licensed clinical social worker. I work at the 2nd Medical Group.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Chief. My name is Adrienne Banks. I am Barksdale's Domestic Abuse Victim Advocate. The acronym is DAVA.
Thank you, Ms. Banks.
Hello, Chief. How you doing? Master Sergeant Withers, two LRS First Sergeant here at Barksdale. Been doing this about almost 2 years now.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Chief. My name is Kelsey Jackson. I am a Family Advocacy Intervention Specialist in the 2nd Medical Group, and I am also a licensed clinical social worker.
Awesome. As you can see, we've got some of the best and brightest minds here between two buffs, and this is all to help our airmen, our guardians, our CGOs, FGOs, as well as anybody that's just watching this, our retirees, our contractors, even some of our family members out here. So hopefully you'll take away something in your cargo pocket and you can use it to be and build a better version of you. So I'm just going to throw this out there just for a conversation starter. Anybody can bite on this. What does a healthy relationship look like for us in today's society?
So I think I'll start off. I think healthy relationships look like it can be different for anybody. Each individual relationship between the two people can be, it can have different faces. What's healthy for me is maybe it should be healthy for another person. But most thing is that whatever's keeping you positive, making you look forward, lean forward, basically, and progressing you, having you move forward yeah.
Ms. Banks?
I agree. It's so funny is when you can be yourself in a relationship, when you don't have to change who you are, when you can be your authentic self, I think that really places you, inside the relationship where you can be your own independent person. You can make your own decisions, but also discuss it with your intimate partner. And ultimately, being able to be yourself, make good decisions, say no, say what hurts, say what you don't like, give your own opinion, and have the ability to be your unique self.
You guys provided a lot in just that one response, so thank you. Any other additions on that?
I would have to concur the same thing with what Ms. Banks said. If you're able to be yourself, both good and bad, right? So you want individuals to feel like, when they're having a bad day, they have that support and that person that they're able to be on a team with. So it won't always be good. But if you have someone with you who's able to embrace those things and understand that he or she is having a bad day, they're able to accept that and walk with you and not make you feel bad about that. So if you're able to be your authentic self, if you're able to convey how you're feeling, I think you're on the road to being in a healthy relationship.
That's a very unique word, authentic. I mean, because we live in a very technology-based environment where we have the ability to re-snap over and over and over that perfect picture before we post it, right?
Absolutely.
We got to make sure that all our
Yes, sir.
social medias are right. So how do we find that authenticity in a world that seems to be a little bit plastic with our social media use?
So I think one thing, Chief, is just really kind of self-reflection, right? Really kind of relying on our morals and values. So one thing, kind of piggyback off the question that we previously talked about, one thing is balance, for maintaining a healthy relationship and being in a healthy relationship. I would say, because sometimes, you ever have that one friend that's always giving, right?
Yes.
And never getting anything back.
Yes.
That's exhausting. So one thing I would say when you're thinking about those healthy relationships and trying to figure out, the differences and how to navigate through all the social media stuff like that, just one, checking that balance and and self-reflecting and really kind of taking a look at your values too. So all that encompasses. So I know I kind of went back on your previous question, but I want to.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, because all of this kind of intertwines, and we need to make sure that we put it together in something that everyone can use. And I mean, it's helping agencies, you know, the SHIRT and our family advocacy partners, our DAVA. I mean, how do we become more aware of domestic violence if we don't know what right looks like? And what we're trained to think is right is actually really kind of sideways and wrong. So.
I believe too, Chief, you know, getting to know people. We all present very well, right? When you first met your wife, I mean, you know, before you were married, you had your best cologne on, and you had, you know, for women, we get our hair done, our nails done, we have on our best outfits, and so we all present very, very well. It takes a little while to get to know someone.
Sure.
And, you know, sometimes we don't wait long enough. And then when the real person shows up, sometimes people have a hard time handling that. I think it was the great Maya Angelou. She said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So even with the red flags, and I know that we'll discuss that, but people present well. And that's not always the authentic person that they are.
Absolutely.
And also asking questions. A lot of things we do, we avoid asking questions because we're afraid of the answer. So I think just like you said about social media, we present our best selves. You have a lot of different takes that a lot of pictures you can take.
Sure.
You pick the right one and then you post that because that's what social media would see. But sometimes if we ask questions, the right questions, right? So no question is a dumb question. I always tell people, ask as many questions as you want to ask because a person's answers to those will probably give you a little glimpse into who they really are, even if it's not the answer that you really want. So like you said, taking time and talking and asking questions will kind of avoid some of that unhealthy behavior.
I will say, you know, living in the moment, like put the phones down and be in the moment with that person, you know, help you get to know them. Because like you said, that social media is not a true representation of that person. We all see it before where we think a person's having a great life and they're living their best life. But you actually sit down and talk to them and they're not, they're doing bad. They're just putting on the front for the social media. Because it's what they do these days. Is what we do, I guess, these days.
Absolutely. Everything is a highlight reel. It's nothing bad. There's tons of virtue signaling. Nobody's gonna post that they're having domestic violence at home. So help us understand, team, why are healthy relationships so important, especially in this socially rich platform media environment, because we're more socially connected than ever before, right? But we're not very social. So, any thoughts on that?
I think the first thing that kind of comes to my mind, right, when I think about relationships, and last month was Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and when you think about some of the leading causes, to suicide, to some of the risk factors and warning signs, and relationships is really a key factor in it. So just really kind of focusing and really kind of paying attention on that and really kind of being aware of that piece in itself is extremely important, when it comes to, taking care of ourselves and relationships and things of that nature. So I was going a good point to restate your question. Really, like I think the biggest takeaway, honestly, like I said, just how important it is to just maintaining and really kind of looking at that relationship and the risk factors that it plays with suicide and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I think we're all relational people. We all were created to have relationship. Sometimes I think some may be a little too eager to jump into those, and that's how we get into these situations, and we may bite off a little bit more than we can chew too soon. So I think it's not a bad thing to want a relationship and to be relational, but like you said, just to take our time and recognize, not sweeping things under the rug, right? So if an individual, if you're in the car with your significant other and they get upset that someone cut them off in the middle of the road and you see how angry they get, that may be a red flag that we need to pay attention to, which will warrant a question. So it's not bad that you're in that relationship. It just may warrant a few questions, and it may warrant some good conversations that need to be had. So the relationship isn't bad, or being in relationship with others is not bad, because we are such a relational society. It's just making sure we ask the right questions and paying attention to things.
It's a very good response. I mean, because COVID has shown us that the word social distance turned into social isolation for some, right? And as we try to strive to build the relationship piece, because we all want to feel loved, valued, and appreciated, and we want to have that, pardon the word, the intimacy of just somebody being close to us, not in a sexual way, but just to be close to us and to know that somebody has our back. I mean, how do we find, what are some cues to find those healthy relationships where we know that my sister and my brother are my keepers?
I think communication is key. And everyone communicates differently. Of course, as you see, I'm a communicator. And sometimes people are in a relationship with people who don't communicate as much. And so just even finding that balance and opening up the communication, maybe I'm more quiet than I normally am. And my significant other saying, hey, is everything okay? Or checking on the other person, especially during that isolation period, man. I'm telling you, I had an eye-opener, even in my own relationship. Like I said, I've been married 28 years. But I'm telling you, I said, wow, just because my husband is quiet doesn't mean something's wrong. But usually when I'm extra quiet, there is something wrong. And so just having that balance and that communication, and then checking on others.
And I think when, you guys brought up the COVID piece and the social isolation, and I think, and you mentioned, a lot of us are geo-bachelors, the term that we kind of utilize, and I think those social relationships are important, especially you have to kind of get creative, for building, keeping that connection going. For instance, like we mentioned earlier, like FaceTiming, but sometimes even going back old school, like writing a love letter and putting it in the mail to your significant other. So think about different ways to continue to, follow that relationship and keep it interesting, for lack of better words. So.
Love letter, go ahead. I want that. Wow, I hadn't thought about that.
But different ways, like I mean, just thinking outside the box, right? We all know when COVID hit and those isolation periods, and I mean, even for me, right, it was pretty challenging, especially individuals that's used to that connectedness, right? And we need that as human nature, as human beings, like we need that. Sometimes we think we don't, but we need that, and it's so important. And so, any type of way that you can utilize that and be creative with your significant other and your spouse, those relationships, and not even make it a spouse thing, right? So I know we're talking about healthy relationships overall. So just that connectedness piece too. So just finding ways to do that.
And if you're single, knowing that you don't have, that we talked about the relationship side of it, but when you're during COVID and you're isolated, you'll start to settle. Just to have a relationship with anybody or just to have that connection with somebody. So being able to evaluate yourself and say, hey, do I really like this person? Am I coming from a place of loneliness? Or do I genuinely like this person? So, and when we can identify and kind of self-reflect, that will allow us to check ourselves and say, maybe I should not engage in this form of a relationship, or maybe we're good as just friends. Rather than getting into a relationship, because some things we jump into too fast and we do it out of a lonely place. And when we do it out of a lonely place, we have not taken care of the baggage or the things that we should have taken care of from previous relationships or from previous trauma.
So not just key in on, in personal relationships with your significant other, but, as in work relationships, healthy relationships at work matter as well, because you have a bad day at work, you can go talk to someone, or you can see those cues that help out with suicide. I think, like, kind of trying to get off track a little bit, but suicide, domestic violence, and healthy relationships all work together. All the same factors, or all risk factors, or whatever, are the same. I see them as the same. You see someone not doing well, you see they come in late for work that day, having that healthy relationship with that individual, knowing, hey, this is not their normal thing they do. Let me go talk to him. Let me go let me step down to his office, not shoot a text message or shoot an email. Let me walk down to his office and see, or his cubicle, and see how he's doing. Let's go to lunch. Let's do something. Build that healthy relationship by doing something productive, and not always and productive could be anything. Help them out at work or take them out, have dinner downtown.
Right.
And sure, you kind of spoke to me because the way you connected the DV and the suicide awareness, you actually did a little bit better than I. All those thoughts was coming, right? Like, I want to see all of them, I want to address all of them. But that work factor that you said, that healthy relationship piece, right? Right now we're kind of focusing on DV, but having that healthy work relationship, so you know your airmen, you know your individuals, right? You know the people that you work with. You notice, like, hey, they may have a mark here that wasn't there yesterday. So being intrusive, so that's just as important. So I definitely appreciate you for bringing that up, because when we talk about those warning signs and things of that nature, and just noticing DV overall, sometimes, when we have people who have experienced domestic violence, they're not relatively open with it. They don't just come out and say, hey, this is going on. So that work relationship is definitely important. So I just kind of wanted to highlight it and just say, yeah, for sure, that's definitely a great point.
I mean, our awareness for domestic violence, Ms. Banks, I want to tee this up directly to you.
Yes.
I mean, we live in this society where we're kind of less social, and we live in a society where we can post anything we want to our social media platform without fear of consequence, right? So we've almost conditioned ourselves to be insulting without fear of worry.
Absolutely.
And how does that contribute to unhealthy relationships today? And then over to the rest of us to kind of pick up on her points.
I think, sir, it almost has to do with almost self-worth, because if you base your self-worth on how many likes you get on the post, that might be tough. Because and some people do that. If you're presenting like you're really, really lonely, and then therefore you may attract someone that may be a predator, that may be what they're looking for. And so just being sure and being careful what you do post and what you do share. I tell people, don't put your address and don't take pictures of your, social media with your address or your license plates on your car, and just being safe. But again, let's say that you do have a predator or an abuser, and you're presenting that you're lonely, and maybe you're showing pictures of your children. So I just believe that there needs to be a little bit more safety when we are engaging on social media. And there may be a person that presents like they're very nice, and maybe they're not that nice. Maybe they are the abuser. Maybe they want to go on a date with you, but in their previous relationship, you find out later on that they abused every a female or male in the relationship that they were in.
It's always three sides to the story. Five sides.
I
I say it's hard for
Always
me.
more,
It's
right?
it's always more to the story. I say three, you say five all the time, and it's hard to remember the five. But it's my side, your side, and the truth, right?
That's true.
But yeah, at the end of the day, you got to make sure. I look at it like how you saying, post your social media stuff on there. It's just like we teach all the CBTs every day, the AT, or anti-terrorism measures. Is be the same way in your relationship. Do those type things to help you be a hard target for domestic violence or unhealthy relationships.
Well, I mean, think about that safety, what you're talking about. If I'm advertising that I'm on vacation in Hawaii, now everybody knows my house is empty.
Absolutely.
And so I have friends that they actually wait until they're back from their vacation to post their pictures for that particular reason. And if we do live in a predatory society, and I think we were talking before we started filming. I mean, we were talking about the demographics that fall into being a little bit taken advantage of. I mean, Ms. Jackson, you want to kind of bring that up?
So, sure, a little bit of the conversation was those individuals between the ages of like 18 or 25 and under. We see a lot of those, so and that generation are those individuals who are tech savvy. They like to post. They're using social media using for dating, primarily for dating or finding people, and just showing everything and giving people access to everything, the food that they're eating, where they are, they're tagging their location. That's the trend now. And that makes us a little bit more susceptible to predators and opens the door for opportunity. And sometimes those opportunities are not the best. And so when we get into these relationships, or we provide individuals that access, sometimes they may have an ulterior motive. They may have something that's not healthy, and then we end up in this spiral of events, right? We jump into these relationships fast. We don't pay attention to red flags. We have children. It's a lot of things happen, and then a year or 2 years down the line, we're an individual that we didn't see ourselves being before we got into that relationship. So it could all start with social media, tagging where you are, doing things like that, and coming from a safety perspective, and then it can spiral out of control very fast.
I think even, sorry, just to piggyback up a little bit of this, I know we're talking about social media, the posting, and also just really paying attention to what your friends are posting, right? I think sometimes we'll look at what they post and we'll look at a picture and we're like, oh, that's a nice picture, but how often do we really, really look at that individual, like that family, right? And really see that. And we brought up a point, like sometimes we don't recognize domestic violence until it's too late. We have that friend or we have that family member and, have been abusing, their significant other for years, right? And we see these pictures and sometimes, and I did this personally, I went back through some pictures, maybe like a couple of months prior to me finding out. And little did I know, as I zoom up, right, and you really kind of pay attention to those pictures, you can see the pain, you can see the hurt, you can even see some bruises and markings. So I challenge individuals to, don't look at pictures for just, oh, that's a cute picture, but also I'm looking at this picture, I'm their friend, just really being that support too. So looking at it from a different lens, it's a good thing.
And all the time, it's not, I think a lot of times it's not physical, right? So the physical, that's easy to see, the black eye. But when you're talking about economic abuse earlier, like a lot of things, the intimidation, the emotional abuse, and those things, they're really, really important. And that comes with rapport and with conversation, working relationships. It's good to be professional and just ask how individuals are doing. And when people open up, being that good wingman and telling them, hey, this kind of sounds like, something else, or, because like I said, the physical is easy to see. When people are throwing things beside your head or making you feel intimidated and making you feel afraid of them, they're not hurting you with their hands. So I may not be able to see it in a picture, but creating a rapport and conversation with individuals may give them a glimpse into emotional abuse or something else they may be experiencing.
So what do you think are some signs here that people could be experiencing it? I know, one thing could be constant checking on the phone, right? You might have been with that friend, right, who constantly looks at the phone. It could be something or it could be nothing.
Could be, yeah.
You wouldn't know unless you ask the question.
And we address this because we're in FTAC and with the curriculum, and it's awesome conversation. And it's the monitoring. So for me, if I had to check in every 15 minutes with my husband, that would bother me. Like, that would not be okay. But for some people, that is okay. And so it just depends on who you're dealing with, what your likes and dislikes are. But again, sometimes people do have to check in and they won't tell you. And those are certain things to look at. Or they have to answer their phone.
Yeah, they can't miss a call.
Mm-hmm. They can't turn their locations off. And I know someone, and in my past, and I didn't know that this person was being monitored, and they had to check in, at a certain time. They had to be at home by a certain time, and it bothered me, but it was so normalized to them that they didn't realize that was a part of like power and control, the monitoring.
Mm-hmm. We're discussing what's a healthy relationship looks like, and if that's your view of normal,
right?
It's really kind of hard to kind of tease that out and say, hey, young person, hey, adult, you're really experiencing something that's kind of abnormal. This is not what normal society, the majority of normal people go through.
Right.
So that's an interesting perspective. And sure, you're we pay you to respond to these
Yes, sir.
incidents, right? I mean, as a guy that's also looking for those things as well as kind of putting it back together. And I mean, we're collectively all people that kind of look for them and put it back together, but we kind of look to you because you've got that symbol on your chest.
Sure. And so for us, as church, it's kind of hard for us to get to know every individual in the unit, but we try our best. But we lean heavily on the supervisors to know those individuals. And so if I have to go to a incident, I want to gather more information, try to help this individual out, but I need to know what has changed or what they need from us, or what the supervisor or best friend from that healthy relationship has seen change over time, to get us to where we got right now. Because it didn't just happen overnight. Healthy relationships you can ruin a relationship overnight, but you can't, healthy relationships build over time. But when you get to that unhealthy relationship, it's something that has been occurring. They didn't just go out and have a bad day. And sometimes it may be just a bad day, but it's fixed. They are able to, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize for it. But a lot of times I see is the abuser or the spouse or the friend is not taking any accountability for what they're doing.
I'm not sure if you mentioned something about these behaviors being normalized, like tracking or hitting, kicking, punching. And so oftentimes my conversations with shirts is why do they stay? Why do victims stay? And I use this statement, the love, the hope, and the fear. They love the individual, right? And they hope that they get better. Oftentimes resources are available and have been offered, like counseling. And they hope that they get better with the counseling, or they hope that they change. And then the fear is, let's say it's a member, the fear is that my leadership is going to expect me to leave this relationship, or the civilian, my parents or my friends are going to expect me to leave this relationship. And then oftentimes the fear is that the offender, if they've made death threats or threats to remove money or to take children, that is the fear portion of it. So what can we do? We can provide that service for the supportive services for the victims. I know shirts do a great job. I'm going to say this, the Barksdale Air Force Base shirts do a great job of making sure that the whole family is safe and receives resources.
In all our talks, you always say, 8 to 88 times. You probably think nobody listens, but that's how long it takes that you've told us it takes for an individual to come to the realization they need to get out of a relationship or move on or start to move forward in a relationship.
Sometimes you and maybe the supervisor or the unit, you guys may be the only support system that a victim has, honestly. And so again, those supportive services and understanding that it does take a victim 8 to 88 times to leave an abusive relationship because they love the person. Listen, when I meet you, I'm going to do this real quick. When I meet you, I'm going to be like, I love you so much, and I'm just going to treat you so good, and you're so handsome. And then all of a sudden, this person shows up that's demeaning and degrading and cursing and all those things. And you're like, no, I want this person. And so the person always has the picture of this person when this is who the person really is. So that's what makes it very difficult also for a male or a female to leave an abusive relationship.
And also, I think it kind of ties back around to where we're all looking to help an individual, right? So Shirt identifies and it says, hey, we have the DAVA available to come and speak with you. And that way you're able to identify some things that they may not be able to see it, but you're able to see that if this is how this person is presenting, you may be in a situation that looks like an unhealthy relationship and it could be abusive. And so making sure that individual understands that, and also that they have we have services, individual therapy or fast services that they can take advantage of to process all of that. Those are services that's directly driven by the member, and they can identify when we've met the goal, and we can all sit down and agree like, hey, I now identify and I know that I may be in an unhealthy relationship, and maybe now I'm looking forward to leaving or making a step forward in another direction. So I think it's important that we all understand that we're working together. If he can identify it or the shirt can identify it, we're all here to work and help one individual, even if it takes them 88 times, even if it takes them 89 times. We're here to let them know that, hey, I know you've been here 90 times, but this may be the 91st time, and we're willing to help you, engaging in these services and letting them know we're not judging you. We're here to support you, and that's what we're here for. So.
And once it's been established, listen, we work so well together in family advocacy. Let's say that we have the member that's the abuser, and let's say that we have a wife here and children. Listen, one thing that I do know about the military is they provide services for the alleged offender and for the victim. And oftentimes outside the military channels, I call it civilian land, sometimes we don't see that.
Right.
So the military offers so many resources.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's that therapy or that empowerment to the alleged offender as well. Right. Because some people do want to reconcile. And so we can't tell people, oh, you can't be together, but we've seen people reconcile. And so that's why the services that family advocacy and the therapy and all those things that our clinical staff provides is excellent for the whole family.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I think sometimes when people hear family advocacy, they think that, oh my God, I'm going to get my kids taken away, or oh my God, they want me to end my relationship. And we want what you want, right? As long as it's safe. I mean, I will say that point. As Ms. Banks had said earlier, some individuals, it takes them, a while to really recognize that abuse. And because when you think about individuals not knowing what abuse looks like, so we often model the behavior that we saw as children, right? I mean, when you think about, when we soak in and we, how we emulate things, right, that we watched or observed growing up. So it may take that individual receiving some education, coming through some of our preventative service, talking with the data, recognizing some of those red flags, some of those warning signs, and really realizing what that looks like. And also, I just wanted to kind of tie back in with the shirt too and say, man, you guys are a pivotal role into all this stuff, especially that initial response, right? When you guys get that call, it's like game on, right? And there's some frustration associated with it too, right? So I'll put that out there and be real.
Yeah, it is.
We said sometimes it takes 8 to 88 times, and sometimes they may be on that 87th time. You're at your wit's end, like, I'm frustrated. Why do they keep going back? Oh my God, like, I'm over it. But we need you to stay engaged and stay with it. And we want you guys to know too, as first sergeants, like, that support system. If you feel like I'm kind of tapping out, I'm not tapping out as an aspect of where you're not hitting that member, but like, I'm exhausted, I'm depleted, where do I go? Definitely feel free to reach out for us too. We're there to kind of guide and offer those supportive services, and just kind of so you can relate to that individual also, because they may not want to come in, they may not want to talk with the staff, they may not want to talk with me, they may not want to talk with Ms. Jackson, they may not want to talk with the chief.
We have a FAPA. We have FAPAs. That's our front line. And oftentimes the FAPAs, they are the the parties that get the initial phone call. They may call and so even at that point, the person who receives the phone call is how you responded, even your tone, whether they'll engage or not engage. I mean, we have nurses, our NPSP program. We of course have our FAO who has to make a lot of serious decisions. We have another social worker. And so there's just a whole team of us. And then of course we have our FAs, our intervention specialists, and we're briefing all over. So it takes all the components, everyone, to make sure that these families are receiving what they need, they get the treatment, and they're also safe.
So as we kind of conclude this, domestic violence awareness, how can we encapsulate maybe some prevention efforts or some tips, if we could kind of just look at those as we wrap up? What do we do now that we've identified it? How can we keep it from happening again, or how can we get those relationships back on track, or make our seemingly maybe borderline unhealthy relationships maybe a little bit more healthy?
So I can start off with that one. So I think that communication is probably one of the best things to do to help out those relationships. Communicating with whether it be the person that you're in your relationship or an outside person, and that outside bystander, communicating with the victim, the possible victim, letting them know that they are not by themselves, and we're here to support them no matter what. Give them that person to talk to, because they may feel like they don't have anyone to talk to. And then, just being there, not getting frustrated. And then I don't want to say pressure, but, continue to support them no matter what. And don't, because I know it's kind of frustrating responding to a situation and the persons need to get out of the situation, but they don't want to. And just being there to support them and continue to help them out through that situation, no matter what, if it's the first or the 88th time.
Also creating a safe place for people to feel like they can talk about their problems and talk about their relationship, and making sure that people are aware of the preventive services that we have here on base. There's a lot of services that individuals can take advantage of, and they can remain confidential, so making sure that, assures that you guys know the services, and you guys have a plethora, know everything, that we have here on base, but making sure that those individuals who may be in that unhealthy relationship understand this doesn't mean that this will be a change in your job. We're just looking to help you to be a better individual so that you can do a good job.
Being preventative too is another one, I think. Me and my wife, we go see counseling probably every couple of years just to get us back to balance. We start to teeter off, and we just make sure we go see someone to kind of work out our issues. Will help us not to get to a point where it gets violent or gets abusive.
And I think understanding culture, deal with that a whole lot. Culture and religion and family of origin. And oftentimes we have to understand the family of which the person, even the offender, how they were raised, who were their caretakers, who were their caregivers. And I think, Captain, you may have mentioned that. What's abusive to one person may not be abusive to another. So I'll just use you as an example. I'll make myself the bad person. If you're very calm and you came from a family where they had family meetings, now family meetings are very important. I encourage people to do that, even if you didn't do it in your own family. Every Friday night, get everybody at the table, cell phones down, let's start to communicate. Well, let's say you came from that environment, but I came from the screaming family, and there was no conflict resolution, and everybody was very emotional. So now we're in a relationship, and I start to yell at you, I start to curse at you, I start throwing things around the room. Now you feel like you're being abused, correct? And so I think the family of origin, and so marriage counseling, chaplain, 100% confidentiality, anger management. Maybe I need anger management, so I need to go to Kelsey's class.
Right.
So we can do those preventive things before it crosses over to the threshold of abuse.
Right.
Because it may just be the way that we were raised and how we see, and oftentimes some things are abuse is normalized. Some people have to unlearn those behaviors because they don't know that yelling and cursing and throwing things in a relationship is not okay, because that's what they've always seen.
Yeah, I would say engagement and application. So we talked about a lot of services, right? Making that first step for is picking up that phone or speaking with your first sergeant or speaking with your supervisor and saying, hey, I'm interested in this, if you're a little bit hesitant. But yet, once you actually pick up that phone and engage in those services, also that sustainment of those skills that you learn, right? That conflict resolution, that fair arguing, that assertive communication. As human nature, sometimes we tend to engage in behavioral drift, right? When we don't continue to practice those things and skills that we learn. For instance, Chief, I don't know if you said do stats, but just saying, like, when you don't continue to do things, obviously you tend to drift away from them. So it's the same when it comes to relationships, communication, and things like that in general too. So those are my two things or two takeaways. Definitely with engagement and sustainment of those skills.
I have realized that my communication with my wife always suffers when I'm waiting on my turn to talk, because I'm not really listening.
You're listening to respond.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm waiting on my turn to talk.
To respond.
I'm listening to respond. So, the importance of this conversation is of utmost importance. I mean, we're here between two buffs talking. We brought together a family of subject matter experts. These SMEs, our family of SMEs, are here to help you guys out there to become better families, better partners, better people. And as we traverse this land, just being good humans is always a great thing. So I want to thank each and every one of you for making yourself available for this. I want to thank each of you for being those subject matter experts that our airmen and guardians and civilians and retirees can lean on. And if you need any of us, stop us. We will put you in contact with the right helping agency. If we are the helping agency, we will be there to hold you up and support you through everything you need. This has been Between Two Buffs for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you for joining us.